Today we are going to review the movie The Dictator that came in 2012, and today we are going to do its full movie review and talk about its fact and etc. If we talk about its overview, let's talk about its introduction. The Dictator is a political satire comedy film directed by Larry Charles and starring Judge Baron Cohen, known for his boundary-pushing humor and satirical takes on social political issues. Cohen also starred in and co-wrote the film. If we talk about released on May 16, 2012, the film lampoons authoritarian regimes, dictatorship culture, and geopolitical stereotypes, blending absurd humor with sharp satire. The film tone is provocative, irreverent, and intentionally over the top, aiming to critique power, corruption, and cultural misunderstandings through parody. If we talk about plot summary, the story follows General Aladdin, the ruthless and comically exaggerated dictator of the fictional North African country of Media's character played by Cohen is a parody of real-world authoritarian leaders combining traits of Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, Kim Jong-il, and others. If you talk about this synopsis, Aladdin is a dictator obsessed with maintaining his power through repression, military strength, and a cult of personality in a plot to assassinate him in an uncovered Aladdin's advisor attempt to modernize Wadia by inviting democratic reforms. He travels to New York City to attend the United Nations, where he is manipulated by a lobbyist, Tamir Ben Kingsley, and an activist, Joanna Faris. During his trip, he is buried, shaved, and replaced by a double, leading to a series of comedic misadventures. The film explores his journey from ruthless dictator to someone who begins to question his authority, culminating in his attempt to reclaim his throne and restore his rule. The film ends with Aladdin embracing a more humanized, less oppressive approach, though still retaining his authoritarian style, effective and satirical critiques of power and tyranny. If we talk about main cast and character, Sacha Baron Cohen as General Aladdin, the hyperbolic dictator of Wadia, a caricature of oppressive leaders. Ben Kingsley as Tamir, a political lobby attempting to manipulate Aladdin for his own gain. Anna Faris as Zoe, an activist and love interest who helps Aladdin find his humanity. If we talk about John C. Reilly as Nixon, the Navy and loyal eyed to Aladdin, Jason Mendoza as Major Amar, Aladdin's military aide. Freddie Gibbons as Dahlia, Aladdin's bodyguard and confidant. And if we talk about themes and satirical targets, dictatorship and authoritarian, the film exaggerates the absurdity of dictatorial rule, making fun of cult of personality, repression, and political corruption. If we talk about Western culture and politics, It satirizes Western diplomacy, corporate influence, and media portrays of dictators. If we talk about cultural stereotypes, the film plays with stereotypes about Middle Eastern and African regimes, often pushing boundaries with controversial humor. If we talk about freedom and humanity, through Aladdin's transformation, the film explores themes of human rights, personal freedom, and the paradoxes of power, communist and notable scenes. Absurd humor and struggle is Cohen's signature style involves pushing social boundaries, often creating uncomfortable but hilarious moments. The Vadia dance in paradigm traditional and stereotypical Middle Eastern dance exaggerated for comedic effect. If we talk about scenes, Aladdin shaped by William symbolizes his loss of power and dignity. The UN scene Cohen's character delivers a bizarre, hilarious speech smoking international diplomacy. The fake Aladdin, the betrayal and imposition scene highlight themes of deception and identity. Okay, where we were. The fake Aladdin, the betrayal and impression scenes highlighting themes of deception and identity. The ending, Aladdin's unexpected embrace of democracy, though still with authoritarian tendencies, serve as a satirical commentary on political reform. If we talk about critical reception and audience response, the film received a mixed review from critics but was generally appreciated for Cohen's comedic talent and its bold satire. Rotten Tomato holds a rating of around 56%, indicating mixed reviews. Metacritic score of 50, reflecting mixed or average reviews. And audience reception, many fans enjoyed Cohen's signature of hegemony, pushing humor, while some critics found it defensive or over the top. If we talk about box office, firstly, if we talk about budget, approximately 65 million, and its gross revenue was about 179 million worldwide, making it a commercial success. If we talk about controversies and cultural impact, the film was considered highly controversial for its crude humor, stereotypes, and political satire. If we talk about some critics and audiences accused it of promoting offensive stereotypes or insensitivity Cohen's portrayal of dictators and Middle Eastern stereotypes sparked debates about cultural sensitivity and political correctness. Despite controversies, the dictator is regarded as a significant entry in Cohen's body of work, showcasing his ability to blend satire with slapstick. If we talk about interesting fact and trivia, improvisation. Much of Cohen's performances and many scenes were improvised, emphasizing spontaneity. Real location film took place in various locations, including New York City and Los Angeles. If we talk about cameo and guest roles, several celebrities appeared in small roles or cameos, including Megan Fox. If we talk about cultural parodies, the film parodies new just political figures and global issues, often in exaggerated humorous ways. If we talk about the use of propaganda, the film mimics propaganda films through style and presentation, emphasizing the satirical nature. Sacha Cohen's method. Cohen immersed himself deeply into the role, often staying in character during filming to maintain authenticity in his satirical approach. If we talk about critical analysis and legacy, The Dictator exemplifies Cohen's mastery of satirical comedy, combining sharp social critique with outrageous humor. It satirizes authoritarian regimes, Western diplomacy, and cultural stereotypes, provoking thought and laughter simultaneously. While some use it as a bold, funny critique of tyranny, others criticize it for intensity. Its legacy lies in its ability to push boundaries and spark debates about freedom of expression. If you talk about cultural stereotypes and political satire, uh, and if you talk about its summary and final thoughts, The Dictator is a provocative comedy that uses satire to entertain and critique. Sacha Baron Cohen's portrayal of Aladdin is both hilarious and disturbing, avoiding the absurdity of absolute power. The film's humor is intentionally outrageous, designed to challenge viewers' perception of politics, culture, and human rights. It remains a noteworthy film for its daring content, sharp wit, and cultural commentary, with one that continues to spark decision on the limits of comedy and satire. So, if we talk about more, then it will take a little time to load more of it. Let's take a little break for that. If you talk about the Dictator, 2012 has in-depth film review, fact analysis, and cultural commentary. Let's start with introduction, context, and significance. The Dictator stands as one of Sacha Baron Cohen's most provocative and daring comedies, known for his fearless satire and ability to push social boundaries. Cohen delivered a film that combines slapstick, parody, and witty politically commentary wrapped in absurd humor. The film is satirical take on authoritarian regimes, dictatorship, and international politics. It's both a parody of real world despot and a critic of Western diplomacy, media portrayal, and cultural stereotypes released amidst ongoing global conflict and debates about freedom, human rights, and political corruption. The film aims to provoke thought while entertaining with outrageous humor. If we talk about cultural impact and resilience, despite mixed critics' reviews, The Dictator resonates with the audience worldwide, pushing over 179 million globally against a 65 million budget. Its bold humor, controversial scene, and satirical edge sparked controversy. Conversation about the boundaries of comedy, political correctness, and cultural stereotypes, cementing its place in modern comedy history. If we talk about detailed plot breakdown and scene analysis, talk about opening sequence and stabilizing the world. The film opens with a parody of propaganda films introducing Mali as a fictional North African country ruled by General Al-Ali, who exaggerated accent, military parades, and over-the-top imagery set the tour marks attack. We talk about key elements. The opening montage features Aladdin's military might, absurd decrees, and his cult of personality. The scene introduced the absurdity of regime plus bizarre and comic exaggerated. If we talk about the character of General Aladdin, portrayed by Sacha Cohen, traits narcissistic, brutal, ignorant, but also insecure and vulnerable underneath costuming and appearance over the top military uniforms, exaggerated facial hair, and a distinctive accent, parodying real life dictator life like Gaddafi's and Kim Jong-il. We talk about personality, minds, Machiavellian cruelty with childish humor, a parody of the archetype dictator. We talk about the trip to New York and the UNC. Aladdin travels to the United to attend the United Nations, aiming to secure international legitimacy. The scene features Cohen's characteristic improvisation with Aladdin delivering bizarre speeches and instructions. The UN satires diplomatic diplomacy, corrupting and global politics, highlighting the absurdity of international diplomacy through exaggerated caricatures. The betrayal and saving scene. Aladdin is betrayed by his own aides, saved of his beard and replaced by a double Nixon played hilariously by John Shirley. The saving scene is symbolic of emasculating and loss of power, underscoring themes of identity and control, joy and the personal transformation. Joy, played by Faris, is an activist who helps Aladdin discover his humanity. Their relationship is a parody of round cliches exaggerated for comedic effect. The scene where Aladdin is introduced to real life outside dictatorship, shopping, eating, and experience democracy serve as satire of Western cultural influence, toward climax and resolution. Aladdin reclaimed his throne not through conventional means but via absurd comedic antics. The film ends with Aladdin embracing "Are you morally immunized?" We lost at where we were, guys. Okay, let's start with cinematic techniques and stylistic element. Is a parody of propaganda films with exaggerated, colorful visuals, over-the-top costumes, and makeup enhanced the caricature nature of characters. If we talk about humor and improvisation, Cohen's improvisation is central. Many scenes and spontaneous, adding authenticity to satire, shock, humor, slapstick, and parody are blended seamlessly. If we talk about sound and music, use of theatrical music, military marches, and exaggerated sound effects. The soundtrack features Middle Eastern, African, and Western pop songs juxtaposed for comedic effect. The critical research response critically to positive praise for Faris what but some critics found it offensive or completely crude. It about audience reception and popular among fans of Cohen's. This trailer appreciated for pushing boundaries words and animation. Limited word recognition, however, it gained a cult following. If we talk about controversies and cultural decision, the film's satirical portrayal of Middle Eastern and African stereotype led to accusation of insensitivity and cultural insensitivity. Some viewed it as perpetuating harmful stereotypes, while others saw it as a satirical critique of those stereotypes. Cohen and the filmmaker defended the film as satire, emphasizing its goal of challenging prejudice. If we talk about cultural and political impact, if we talk about influence on political satire, the film inspired debates about the limits of satire and the comedy's role in social critics. If we talk about cultural conversations, it highlights issue of free speech, cultural sensitivity, and the role of humor in political discourse. Legacy, despite controversies, it remains a notable example of satirical comedy that confronts uncomfortable truth with humor. If we talk about cultural and political impact, influence on political satire, the film inspired debates about the limits of satire and comedy's role in social critics. If you take our cultural conversation, it highlighted issues of free speech, cultural sensitivity, and the role of humor in political discourse. You can say despite controversy, it remains a notable example of satirical comedy that confronts uncomfortable truth with humor. If we talk about in-depth analysis of key scene and scenes breakdown, UN speech scene, Cohen's character delivers Vijay nonsensical speech parodying diplomatic language, highlight the absurdity of political rhetoric and uncomfortable truth. Humor. We talk about in-depth analysis of key scene and scene breakdown, the UN speech scene, Cohen's character deliver a busy, nonsensical speech parodying diplomatic language, highlights the absurdity of political rhetoric and international diplomacy. The save and rescue scene, the act of saving Aladdin's beard symbolizes emasculation and loss of identity. The scene is both comedic and symbolic of the vulnerability of tyrants. The Vardia dance and parody over the top cuts and dance parody, military displays and curse of personality emphasizes the absurdity of authoritarian spectacle. The ending and aftermath, Aladdin's embrace of a less oppressive but still authoritarian leadership underscores the film's critique of political change. The file scene leave viewers questioning the nature of true freedom and power. If we talk about fan thought and reflection, the Dictator is more than a comedy, it's a provocative social commentary wrapped in outrageous humor. It challenges viewers to confront stereotypes, question political regimes and reflect on the nature of power and freedom. Cohen's fearless performances and sharp satire make it a film that sparks debates and invites multiple viewing to fully appreciate its layered humor and critics. If we talk about more, the Dictator 2012, the ultimate index analysis, reviews, and fact compilation. If we talk about introduction, context, significance, and cultural relevance, the Dictator is a landmark in modern satirical comedy, emblematic of Sacha Baron Cohen's fearless approach to social and political critique, released in 2012 during a period marked by political upheaval, debates about democracy, authoritarianism, and international diplomacy. The film about a time when the world was grappling with issue of freedom, repression, and media manipulative. Cohen, renowned for his work in Borat 2006 and Bruno 2009, continued his tradition of pushing boundaries using humor as a tool to confronting social hypocrisies and stereotypes. The film's warns its outrageous humor, controversial stereotypes, the satirical targets, spark debates about the limits of comedy and the power of satire to challenge perception. We talk about cultural impact and legacy. Despite mixed reviews from critics, the Dictator became a commercial success, grossing over 179 million worldwide against a production budget of approximately 65 million. It garnered a loyal following among fans of Cohen's style, inspiring decision on face with cultural stereotypes and the role of comedy in cultural discourse. To talk about extended Broadway downhill scene analysis, opening footage and stabilizing the world of Vadia. The film opens with a parody of propaganda films, stabilizing Vadia as a fictional exaggerated North African dictatorship. The visuals are vibrant, exaggerated, and filled with over-the-top military display, cult of personality imagery, and visuality face. This adds a turn comedy yet sharply satire highlighting the absurdity of dictatorial regimes. If we talk about introduction of General Aladdin, portrayed by Sacha Cohen, opinion over the top military uniform, thick beard, exaggerated accent. Talk about personality traits, narratives, insecure, violent, childish, yet deeply insecure about his muscularity and authority. We talk about character arc, drama, ruthless, self-absorbed dictator to more self-aware, albeit still authoritarian ruler. The political power and reaction. Aladdin's regime is depicted as a bizarre mixture of cruelty, absurd decrees, and cult-like ritual parodying real-world dictators like Zafi, Saddam Hussein. These options with appearing strong and authoritarian leads to ridiculous policies such as banning lasers and forcing citizens to wear ridiculous clothing, the assassination plot and the Pope. Aladdin's advised not to assassinate him to modernize Wardia, fearing his brutality is holding progress. The assassination attempt leads to chaos with Cohen's character surviving narrowly due to his ignorance and our confidence. If we talk about journey to New York and we have seen Aladdin travels to attend the United Nations, hoping to secure international legitimacy and access to oil reserves. The scene satirizes diplomatic convention with Cohen's character delivering bizarre speeches filled with nonsensical statements parroting political rhetoric. The UN meeting is filled with absurd interaction, highlighting the disconnect between authoritarian regimes and Western diplomacy. The trash saving and disco Aladdin is betrayed by his own aides, said of him bear a symbol of masculinity and authority and replaced with a double action. The shaving scene is both slapstick and symbolic emasculation and loss of identity, highlighting themes of power, vulnerability, and disgust. Encounter with joy, a personal growth. Joy, played by Anna Faris, is an activist who helps Aladdin see the world beyond dictatorship. Their relationship involves from comedic attraction to genuine connection, serving as a vehicle for Aladdin's eternal change. The scene where Aladdin experienced democracy, shopping, eating, and interacting with ordinary Americans are parodies of Western life values and cultural stereotypes. We talk about climatic rebirth and political reversal. If we talk about Aladdin reclaims his throne through a series of ludicrous antics, fighting off enemies, rallying his supporters, and outlandish schemes. The film culminates with climatic rebirth and political reversal. Aladdin reclaimed his throne through a series of ludicrous antics, fighting off enemies, rallying his supporters, and outlandish schemes. The film culminates with Aladdin embracing a more human dictatorship. He less brutal but still authoritarian, highlighting the sacrifice critics of political reform, financial and ending. The film ends ambiguously with Aladdin assuming a new role, less oppressive but still authoritarian, prompting viewers to reflect on the nature of power and democracy. The closing shot leaves a question about whether true freedom is achievable or merely an illusion. If we talk about character analysis and psychological profiles, we talk about General Aladdin complexity beneath the exaggerated buffoonery lies in fragile insecurities and deep-seated fears about aging, masculinity, and loss of power. If we talk about him source, his sadist tantrums, exaggerated bravado, and bizarre decrease satirize the vanity and anxiety of real world exposed. If we take a revolution from a caricature of tyranny to a character who begins questioning his role, though still maintaining authoritarian tendency. If we talk about joy, role catalyst for change and humanization, traits compassionate, idealistic, pragmatic, symbolist, Western liberals value the desire for freedom and the contrast between oppressive regimes and free societies. If we talk about family, portrayed by Van Kingsley treats city manipulative cynical. If we talk about role embodies Western greed and political manipulation, showing how powerful interests exploit regimes for profit. If we talk about themes and satirical message, power and its corrupting influence, the film showcases how dictators manipulate their image and suppress this to maintain control. The exaggerated ritual, decrease, and propaganda highlight the absurdity of absolute power. If we talk about culture and political stereotypes, the film plays with stereotypes about Middle Eastern, Africans, and Western societies, exaggerating them to absurd degrees to critique their stereotypes and misconceptions. Cohen satire explores how stereotypes are used to justify political agendas and media narratives. If we talk about freedom, oppression, and human rights, the contrast between Aladdin's oppression rule and choice activism underscore the universal desire for freedom. The film critics the film critiques Western intervention, highlighting hypocrisy and double standards. If we talk about media and propaganda, the film parodies propaganda techniques, fake news, and political spin, highlighting how information is manipulated to serve regime's interest. We talk about international diplomacy and global politics. The UN seen mock diplomatic language and the superficiality of international relations. The film criticizes the hypocrisy of Western nations dealing with regimes they often support or tolerate. If we talk about absurdity and irony of dictatorship, the film's humor is rooted in the exaggerated racial decrease and behaviors of dictators, highlighting the inherent absurdity of authoritarian rule. If we talk about cinematic style and techniques, visual parody and propaganda aesthetics, bright exaggerated visual mimic propaganda, poster and state-sponsored media. If we talk about costume are ostentatious, military and political uniform. If we talk about humor and improvisation, Cohen's improvisational skills shine with many scenes spontaneous and unscripted, adding authenticity. We talk about shock humor, slapstick and satire are blended seamlessly. If we talk about sound and musical element, over the top sound effect and theatrical music underscore comedic movements, use of cultural stereotypical just music juxtaposes with Western pop song for humor. If we talk about editing and pacing, rapid editing maintains high energy, blending absurd scenes with satirical commentary, cutaways to fake news reports and propaganda reinforce the film's themes Chicago production insight and finessing facts. Director Larry Charles known Harris work on Sinful and Borat. Vidava screenplay written by Cohen, Alec Wake, David Mendel, and Jeff Iscapa. Filming location primarily in Los Angeles, New York, and some shot in the Middle East. Young casting and improvisation. Cohen's improvisational approach led to many spontaneous scenes, special effect and makeup practical effect for exaggerated scene including iconic weird and costume design. If we talk about controversies during production, some scenes were shot with real activists and local authorities adding authenticity but also controversy. If we talk about reception and critical analysis, if we talk about critical reception, Rotten Tomatoes approximately 56% rating. Most but noting Cohen's comedic brilliance. Metacritic score of 50 acknowledging its boldness but some criticism of offensive content. If it have a major critics praised Cohen's fearless humor, but some found it offensive or lacking depth. If we talk about audience response, popular among Cohen's fan base appreciated for pushing boundaries. Some viewers found it provocative, offensive, or purposed, highlighting the division nature of satire. Box office and commercial success grossed over 179 million worldwide. Successful despite controversy, demonstrating the appetite for edgy satire. If we talk about controversies and cultural debates, the film's portrayal of Middle Eastern, African, and Muslim stereotypes sparked accusation of insensitivity and racism. We have critics argued it perpetuated harmful stereotypes, while Cohen claimed it was satire meant to challenge prejudice. The film sparked debates about the ethics of offensive humor and the role of satire in social critique. If we talk about cultural and political impact and legacy, the influence on satirical comedy. Push the boundaries of political satire and comedy, inspiring future works. limits on face which the film become a case study in the limits of satire and the importance of context. We talk about decision on stereotypes, spark conversations about cultural stereotypes, representation, and cultural sensitivity. If we talk about legacy, recognized as a bold, controversial, influential, satirical film that challenges perception about authoritarian regimes and Western diplomacy. We talk about deep dive into key scenes and their meanings. The UN speech scene, Cohen's character delivers an absurd speech ending with nonsensical, humorous declaration, parody of diplomatic language, emphasizing how empty and superficial political rhetoric can be. It will take little time, guys, so you have to wait for a little moment. If we talk about in-depth thematic and philosophical reflection, the Dictator is a satirical mirror to society, reflecting the absurdity, hypocrisy, and contradiction inherent in political power and cultural state executions. Can true freedom exist under any form of government? Are regimes inherently corrupt, or is corruption a human universal? How much does perception shape reality? What role does satire play in winning comfortable truths? Cohen's work encourages us to critically examine that assumption about power, culture, and morality using humor as a lens for social critique. If we talk about conclusion, the significance and inducing relevance. The Dictator remains a provocative, bold, and influential film that exemplifies Cohen's fearless satire. It challenges audience to confront uncomfortable truths with humor, exposing the absurdity of tyranny, stereotypes, and political double standards. It legacy-induced indecision about free speech, cultural representation, and the power of comedy to provoke social changes. While controversial, it underscores the importance of satire as a vital cultural tool, challenging audience to think critically about the world around them. If we talk about more, We talk about the dictator, these are the most complete and in-depth exploration ever introduced in the cultural, political, and artistic context. Dictator is a satirical comedy film that exemplifies such a violent, fearless approach to social commentary, emerging from the success of Turat and Cohen's work is known for its provocative humor, sharp satire, and willingness to offend, aiming to expose social hypocrisies, stereotypes, and political absurdities. The legend to Salvatore and made a global community covered of political EU Arab aspiring protest debates over Middle Eastern languages, Western intervention, and this is about democracy and repression. The arrived at Western parody of authoritarian regimes, Western diplomacy, and cultural stereotypes. The artistic significance. The film is a blend of slapstick comedy, improvisation, and social critique. It employs exaggerated catches and absurdity to highlight the absurdity of dictatorial rule and the hypocrisy of global politics. The cultural impact. Despite mixed critical reviews, the film was a commercial hit, grossing $139 million worldwide and became a topic of cultural debate, conquering free speech, satire, ethics, and stereotypes. With our extensive perseverance in vaccine background, we talk about open parody of propaganda and stabilizing the world of idea. The film begins with a montage mimicking stage propaganda, light colors, military business, and glorification of the fictional country body. The visuals are intentionally over the top with slogans like Vardia, the land of prosperity, the image of military parades, emphasizing the absurdity of authoritarian cuts of personality. If we talk about key point, the opening sets the tone. It is mixed with social critique and introduces central themes. As authority and danger of unchecked power. If we talk about introduction, Aladdin, portrayed by Sacha and Cohen. If we talk about the power and trait of Aladdin, the film humorously depicts Aladdin's obsession with his masculinity, including banning visits to maintain his beard and enforcing rigid laws like prohibiting women from appearing in public without a male escort. His administration is filled with absurd decrees such as banning music, television, and even striving to showcase the extent of his control and vanity. The political intrigue and co-plot, the advisor and generals led by Tamir plot to replace him with a more Western-friendly leader to attract foreign investment and oil deals. If we talk about the plot involves assassination attempts to double process and Charles satirizing the dangerous nature of dictatorial parties. If we talk about trip to New York and the UNC, Aladdin travels to the United States to attend the status aiming to secure economic support. The scene parodied diplomatic speeches. Aladdin's speech is filled with nonsensical, humorous declaration poking fun at political doublespeak. The betrayal of having seen Aladdin is betrayed by his aides, stripped of his beard, a symbol of his masculinity and authority, and replaced with a lookalike nation. The scene is slapstick but symbolic emasculation, loss of identity, and disgrace. Future encounter with joy and personal transformation. Joy played by Anna Faris is an activist who helps Aladdin see the world beyond dictatorship. Their interactions satirize Western rival stereotypes over the top. Activism, naive idealism, and serve as a vehicle for Aladdin's eternal change scenes where Aladdin experiences democracy, shopping, eating it, fast food restaurants, and engaging with ordinary Americans are exaggerated parodies of Western cultural stereotypes. If we talk about the climax and political reversal through a series of ludicrous antics, fighting enemies, relying supporters, and outlandish schemes, Latin reclaims his throne. The ending suggests a more human but still authoritarian leadership, criticizing the idea of political reforms without true underlying change. If we talk about final scene and reflection, the film includes with Aladdin embracing a less brutal, more modernized dictatorship, highlighting the satire that sometimes superficial reform doesn't change underlying oppression. The ending leaves viewers wondering whether true freedom is achievable or merely an illusion for regimes and individuals alike. We talk about deep character analysis and psychological insights. If we talk about General Aladdin core traits, narcissists, insecure, saddies, violent, deeply vain, and obsessed with masculinity. His over-the-top decrease and antics serve as satire for the fragility of authoritarian egos. If we talk about psychology, beneath his bravado lies a vulnerable man afraid of aging, losing power, and emasculation, common themes in real-world despots. We talk about development, his journey from a ruthless dictator to a more human leader is a satire of political superficiality, changing surface appearance without genuine reform. If we talk about Joey role, the voice of Western liberal ideals representing the desire for freedom and democracy, traits compassionate, pragmatic, naive, and idealistic symbolism and orphanage on reflect the Western view of activism and reform, sometimes superficial, sometimes genuine. Talk about the image portrayed by Kingsley traits, witty, cynical, manipulative, goal embodies Western corporate greed and political corruption, highlighting how powerful interests exploit regimes for profit. If we talk about supporting characters, Nixon the loyal knave aids symbolizing unquestioning loyalty and absurdity of blind obedience. If we talk about Mizoram military enforcer embodying militarism and authoritarian obedience, Dahlia bodyguard and confidence represent loyalty based on superficial factors, and her role showcased the absurdity of loyalty in operation regimes. We talk about major themes and their socio-political significance. The film satirized how absolutely power corrupts absolutely with over-the-top decrees, propaganda, and cult of personality. Absurdity of Dictator ritual and decrees, highlighting how superficial their authoritarian cultural and stereotypical portrayals. The film plays with stereotypes about Middle Eastern, African, and Western societies, exaggerating them to critique their use in political narratives. Cultural and stereotypical portrayals. The film plays with stereotypes about Middle Eastern, African, and Western societies, exaggerating them to critique their use in political narratives. Cohen satire exposes how stereotypes are weaponized to justify political agendas and media agendas. We talk about freedom of operation and human rights. The contrast between Aladdin's oppressive rule and rules and Joy's activism underscore the universal human desire for freedom. The film critiques Western hypocrisy, intertwining regimes they sometimes support or tolerate Media and propaganda. The film parodies propaganda techniques, highlighting how information is manipulated, distorted, and used for political growth. If we talk about international diplomacy and Western politics, the UN seen their different languages highlighting the superficiality of international relations. The film critiques Western double standards regarding regime, the support or oppose. If we talk about absurdity and irony of dictatorship, the humor varies from exile rituals and movies are depicted as highlighting their inherent absurdity. It has cinematic, technical, and aesthetic elements, visual and parody artistry, bright, exaggerated visuals, make propaganda posters and state media. Costumes are flamboyant with exaggerated military uniforms and accessories. If we talk about humor and improvisation, Cohen's improvisational approach leads to spontaneous, authentic reaction. Many scenes are unscripted. Shock, humor, slapstick, and satire are seamlessly integrated. we talk about behind the scene inside and production trivia, director Lady Charles known for Shane and Borat, filming location Los Angeles, New York, and some scenes shot in the Middle East. Casting and improvisation. Cohen's improvisation was central. Many scenes were spontaneous, special effect, practical effect for executed scene including the beard shaving scene. If we talk about controversies, some scenes stirred controversy with protest and accusation of insensitivity. If we talk about critical reception and audience response, critical review. Mixed review praise for Cohen's bold humor, criticism for potential offensiveness. Rotten Tomatoes score around 86%. Metacritic 50%. If we talk about audience feedback, popular among Cohen's fans and those appreciating provocative satire. Some found it offensive or in poor taste, fueling debates on satire ethics. If we talk about box office and commercial success, grossed over 179 million, making it a commercial hit despite controversies. If we talk about controversies and cultural debates, the film portrayal of Middle Easterners and Muslim stereotypes sparked accusation of prejudice and insensitivity. Cohen argued it was a satire to challenge prejudice, but critics argued it perpetuated harmful stereotypes. The movie ignited decision about the ethics of offensive humor and the limits of satire. Cultural and political background influence on satirical That scene analyzes and symbolism. The UN speaks Cohen's character believes in non-sensual speech paradigm. Diplomatic language highlights the superficiality, hypocrisy, and theatricality of international diplomacy. Practices the shaming symbolizes emasculation's loss of authority, and this scene explores the themes of identity, power, and vulnerability. With debates and cult personality. Over the top displays mock military spectacles and personality cults. Exaggerated costumes, marching, and propaganda imagery emphasizes absurdity. If we talk about the final scene, leans his superficial reform forms reflection on whether superficial change counts as being progress. The ambiguous ending leaves the audience questioning the nature of true freedom and power. If we talk about philosophical and sociological reflections, the Dictator is not just comedy, it's a mirror reflecting social contradictions. It challenges the nature of authority and legitimacy, the performative aspect of political power, the stereotypes that fuel prejudice and justify oppression. The role of satire in exposing uncomfortable truths, questions whether superficial reforms and opinions can mask a systemic issue, and a commentary on the political process worldwide. If we talk about final thought and enduring significance, the Dictator remains a groundbreaking film in political satire. It demonstrates how humor can serve as a powerful tool to confront social hypocrisies, stereotypes, and abuse of power, while controversial it underscores the importance of free speeches and the proactive role of comedy in social critics. The film relishes its ability to spark debates, challenges audience to reflect critically on authority, culture, and morality, all through the lens of outrageous humor. So it was a review of this movie. I hope you like it. Thank you for watching. And if there was any mistake in this video, then I apologize for that. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.